Bonjour tout le monde. Un grand merci aux organisateurs et à Jean-Michel Miss. A great thank you for all the organization of today for the InCyber. It really brings the bridge between Europe, continental Europe, and Northern America through Quebec and through Montreal. So it's a great pleasure as a conseiller du commerce extérieur, so foreign trade advisor to the French government. We are 4,000 CEOs over 140 countries, and we try to promote the usage of technologies within my presidency of CCE for technologies. That brought me to bump into fabulous expertise and talented and gifted people, out of which obviously Howard Marshall, who I met back in 2016 when he was the managing director for 25 years for the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Intelligence in the US. And then 6 years ago, Howard moved into still cybersecurity and still managing director, but this time for Northern America for Accenture. So without any further ado, the presentation that will be dealt with today by Howard deals with intelligence beyond security operation centers and definitely a roadmap to cyber resilience. The resilience is something quite unique, means a lot of bouncing back and not just being killed by the first attack. So without any further ado, please, Howard, join us.
So good afternoon. Thank you to all the hardy souls that showed up. Gilbert does a great job of setting a very high bar, and I hope not to slide in under it. So thank you for spending some time with me. As he mentioned, I'm going to visit with you about the transformation from the Intel's use for a very tactical application in a security operations center, and thinking about it in terms of what it can do outside of the SOC to help you pursue a posture of being more cyber resilient. And as Gilbert mentioned, the idea of cyber resilience is more than simply saying, okay, we got attacked and now we need to bounce back and we need to be able to jump back into whatever our business is. It's the idea about being as secure as you can on the front end, and certainly there's a use for intelligence in that regard, but it's also about understanding what's going to happen when you're attacked. It's understanding what your incident response capabilities are. It's understanding what a short-term remediation versus a long-term remediation looks like. And most of those things, if not all of them, I would argue, can be vastly improved to be made more effective and efficient through the use of intelligence. So Gilbert mentioned my time in the FBI, and like all of the agents that were there at the time, I went through the 9/11 attack in the World Trade Center and the Pentagon as an FBI agent. And I'm sure some of you are looking quizzically about, okay, Marshall, what does that have to do with cybersecurity? Well, it really has everything to do with cybersecurity, right? The idea that we found ourselves, you can even argue globally, completely unaware that this attack was possible and that it could happen or it was going to happen. Because for all of the FBI's at the time, 105, 110-year history, we had been a reactive agency, meaning something bad happened, we were made aware of it from a variety of different avenues, and then we went and did something about it. Well, on 9/11, we learned that it was no longer good enough to simply react. Like, we were treating international acts of terrorism like we would treat a bank robbery. Hey, we never know when a bank's going to get robbed, but when it does, we're going to be there and we're going to investigate it, identify evidence, and then we're going to go indict someone and put them in jail. Our mandate changed, and this is where I think it ties directly into cybersecurity. Mandate became about preventing the next act of terrorism. So what are the things that we need to be doing right away as an investigative agency to prevent the next 9/11? I won't break my arm patting ourselves on the back, but the Bureau got pretty darn good at the Al-Qaeda style, mass attack and preventing that from happening. Yes, there were one-off individual actors that had to be dealt with, and yes, there were shootings and there were bad things that happened, but we did not suffer another 9/11 style attack. When you extrapolate that and you think about cybersecurity, it doesn't really matter what role you play in it, you think about what is it to prevent that attack. What do we need to be doing on a regular basis, day in and day out, to make sure we're preventing the attack? And I learned, obviously, the very hard way about how to put the things and the elements in place to make sure that, tactically speaking and even strategically speaking, you were actually collecting the right information against requirements that helped you understand two things, right? The nature of the threat, actually understand a couple of things. The nature of the threat, where it emanated from, the capabilities of the threat actors, and where your vulnerabilities were. It also helped you to prioritize all of those things, right? Not even the federal government has maybe the federal government has an unlimited budget, but the FBI did not. So how do we take the money that we have to secure the country against the next cyber attack and guard against, or the next 9/11 style attack, and guard against those things we know are the highest priorities for us? So putting a deliberate process in place, having agents and analysts collecting every day against those requirements, utilizing things like FISA content and confidential human sources, and even conditions on the ground, right? Just understanding what's happening in these countries, that helps us kind of understand how these things may be connected or how they operate independently, but it gives us a full sight picture and an understanding of where we need to position ourselves. Is it foolproof? Of course not, right? The world has yet to figure out a foolproof way to prevent all bad things from happening, which is also the way I think people should be looking at their job in cybersecurity, whether you're the CISO or whether you're sitting in a SOC or you're the SOC manager. Like, we can prevent a lot, and we can harden things to the nth degree, but there is always a weak link somewhere. In most instances, you're talking about the human being, right? We can automate a lot of things and make sure they're done to precision. We can build playbooks, right? We can have escalations, but the human being is always going to be involved at some level, and it's always going to be the weakest link. So how do we prioritize all of this? And so learning that, both the hard way from the FBI, but then understanding how it's done in other countries. And in terms of intelligence collection, we're all pretty much doing the same thing. Any sophisticated intel shop anywhere in the world is built their processes around requirements. So when you think about cyberspace now and you think about commercial space, you're really kind of thinking about, at least when you talk about intelligence, most people are talking about the tactical day in and day out. Like, what is going to alert in my SOC? What red light is going to go off? Like, what are we going to see and how are we going to respond to that at the level 1, level 2, level 3 escalations? That's kind of table stakes, right? Everybody is doing that to some degree, whether they're creating their own intelligence or whether they're going out into this space where a company like Accenture is and they're buying it. Right? It's designed to protect you day in and day out. The blocking and tackling. Make the bad light up and let's deal with it. And that's super, and we love our clients who think very tactically about intelligence and what its role is. But what we're trying to do is get clients to see the application of intelligence throughout this idea of being cyber resilient. So how do we use intelligence to add things to your portfolio or tools in your toolkit? How do we use intelligence to make the hammer bigger, right? How do we get more torque out of the screwdriver? How do we make these things, these tools that we have, function better? So when we think about cyber resilience, we think about things like red teaming, right? Are we testing ourselves on a regular basis? And if we choose to test ourselves, what kind of test are we going to run? What good does it do to build a model or build a test or build an exercise around a low priority threat? I'd argue virtually none. I'd argue you're probably wasting your money. Right? But understanding what intelligence is telling you about the threat actors and about their targets and about how it's impacting an entire industry, like, then you start gaining insights about how you should model that exercise. Hey, look, this particular nation state is not a huge concern of ours, and their TTPs are really not all that relevant to us, so we're not going to spend and waste a whole lot of time on that. But we want to model a red teaming exercise using intelligence to understand what this particular APT is doing right now. And not only do we want to know what they're doing right now, we want to understand the just on the horizon technical things and innovations that are happening that are going to make that threat even greater in our eyes. So can intelligence do that as part of building a cyber resilient organization? The answer is absolutely yes. Is that tactical in nature or is it strategic? I would argue it's very strategic, right? Same thing when we start talking about incident response. If you know a particular threat actor is targeting you consistently, are there TTPs that we can provide to the investigators that are going to hasten the response, right? We're going to move faster toward attribution because these are the top 3 or top 5 threat actors that do exactly what happened to you, and here's how they do it, right? Can we get our incident investigators to be thinking about the intelligence that lets them understand the common environment in which everyone is working, whether it's at the industry level or the geographic level? This is the way you use intelligence, right? You're monitoring your collection, you're producing finished production, right? You're getting to read all these great insights, but where are they most applicable? Well, certainly day-to-day in the SOC, but think about red teaming. Think about incident response being made more effective and efficient through the utilization and application of intelligence. When you continue along that line, you start thinking about things like managed detection and response or managed security services. What role does intelligence play there? Certainly when you're talking about serving hundreds, if not thousands of clients, what you're doing to help promote the alerting, right? Whether or not you have too many false positives, whether or not you're looking in the right places for new IOCs, whether or not you're, in the instance of Accenture at least, are you connected to your incident response folks so that you're getting the real-time data from things that are happening in the wild and incorporating into your alerting almost immediately? Are you building the right signatures, right? Do you have the right stakeholders? So these are the types of things that when you think about intelligence, it's not just red lights going off in a SOC. It's about making all these other components of a broader protection apparatus, about making them better, right? So as you kind of walk through this and you think about intelligence and you think about its application, now we're talking about not the tactical, we're talking about the strategic. You start thinking about your organization differently. And where else could we take this intelligence and make ourselves better? Would it be helpful if you have a very robust M&A process and you're acquiring dozens of companies a year? Does it make sense to maybe understand the environment in which those companies or those industries are working? So when you decide to acquire them and it becomes public, you understand that you will immediately become a target, possibly from a different type of threat actor than you're used to dealing with. And if you know something about that threat actor and you know something about the to-be-acquired company, can you play better defense? Well, I'd argue you absolutely can. I mean, that's the whole point of intelligence, is getting you to that proactive position, right? We don't want to be the FBI on September 10th, 2001, right? We want to be data-led and intel-driven. So we're going to acquire 40 companies this year. Can we build intelligence, can we build threat assessments on these to-be-acquired companies to understand the environment, to understand the risk? Can we talk to the to-be-acquired company to find out what their security looks like? How are they positioned? What do they think of themselves? Can we do scanning in the dark web or in the open web to find out what the vulnerabilities are that the to-be-acquired company has? These are all ways to gather intelligence and make you better. Whether you're to be acquired or you're the acquiring entity, understanding the risk that you're onboarding when you announce this to the world that you are going to acquire this company, that should change your posture, right? Understanding the environment in which that company is should change your posture. What you're doing going forward as you gain the acquisition. Should you be monitoring the to-be-acquired company? Again, we talk about the dark web. One of the things that I took from my government career and have found a niche in cyberspace is creating, what we would call fictitious personas and seeding them with Bitcoin wallets and giving them the authority to actually engage threat actors, right? These are things that we were doing in law enforcement. This is done all over the world. It's not just the FBI. But these are the things that are done to get insights about what's happening. And you hear the term in the media all the time about chatter. Right? What is the chatter about this and what we're doing? And how do we take that chatter and make sense out of it? How do we enrich our own data? And how do we pass those insights to clients? So think mergers and acquisitions. Think about compliance shifts and understanding how a compliance shift may make you more vulnerable or make your vulnerabilities, create more vulnerabilities for you. right? So think about M&A, think about compliance, think about just deciding corporately to do business differently or sell a new product. Like, what does that mean to you from a security perspective? Let's use intel first and not guess. So I think I'm about to get the hook here, but the bottom line to all of this is the application of intelligence is not strictly tactical. It's very useful there, and we applaud people for using it, but if they really want to do the job and they really want to be holistic in how they're applying intel, they need to think more broadly about their organization, because there are far greater opportunities to make yourself more secure and more cyber resilient. So with that, thank you so much to InCyber for having me. I really appreciate everybody's attendance. I know it was down and dirty, quick and fast, but I had a great time. Thank you guys. Enjoy the conference.